This is one of a new series that we have just recently launched about 1 to 2 months ago. So let me elaborate more about this display and the different touchscreen technologies that we have and what are the key feature sets of this new series of industrial display. Let's look into the various industrial display systems that we have in our whole Advantech profile or portfolio. So each one actually, when you talk about industrial display, we have different types meant for different companies or different verticals. So we have the IDK series. We call it the industrial display kit for short. Okay, and these are actually very bare bone unit. These are where you have the LCD, the touchscreen built in together with the touch controller, and it's hanging loose. So this is basically a bare bone unit typically reserved for equipment makers. That means I'm going to make a medical device, I'm going to make an instrumentation device where I need the flexibility of space, and I will do my own mounting. So we have the indoor version, indoor brightness, and then we have the outdoor version, which is very high bright. That's meant for outdoor deployment and also wider temp support. We have the other category, the IDS, the industrial display system. Then we also split them into a few. The IDS 3100 is an open frame design, meaning you only see a metal bracketry behind. So this is actually meant to be targeted for kiosks where I can make my own front ID design. I do not have a bezel, so I can just mount from behind. Okay, so this is the IDS 3100 open frame. Then we have those with bezel, the IDS 3200 and the 3300. Major difference, 3200 is a generic one, whereas the 3300, the front panel is IP65 protected against dirt, dust, water, that kind of stuff. Okay, the IDP 3100, we call it a Pro Flat monitor. This is more for aesthetic view. That means you need to be mounted usually in the public domain, a public area, a public environment. So I need that unit to look much nicer. Okay, so we have the Pro Flat. I'll explain about the VUE series later. We also have the DSD, signage display, which these are all stretch monitors. You can have it, usually what happens is that maybe at a restaurant, you have a queue system, or maybe in hospitals, you have a queue system where you can play advertisement at one side, and then maybe in a restaurant, okay, from 2 to 4 person sitting, how many is waiting in the queue, 6 to 8 person sitting, or more than 10 people, that kind of stuff. Okay, so that is on the DSD. CRV is specifically targeting gaming market. If you go to casinos, okay, you do see some of these curved display for some of the games, and many have running LED. We do integrate with the running LED lights. So most of them is 43-inch, and we'll have smaller size coming. Now the VUE series is our latest series, and we split them into 3 categories: the 2000 series, the 3000 series, and 5000 series, all targeting different market. So the 2000 series is more for general purpose. The 3000 series is more for healthcare, those who need medical grade certified monitors. Okay, I'll elaborate more on that later. And the 5K series, they are all large format display, LFD. So large format display, typical usage is more for signage or for kiosks. Okay, now, so when we talk about consumer display, typically we're going to put it in a home or office or consider quite safe environment. Majority of the mounting are desktop mount, correct? Now, if you look at industrial display, when to use industrial display? Industrial display is more for, I'm going to use it for maybe say 24/7 operation, long hours. I may need certification like medical grade, or maybe EN 50155 for railway, or I will be putting the marine environment, that kind of stuff. So we have different kind, each of the different vertical will have different kind of demand. Okay, for example, for gaming, lottery, this is where curved display comes into play. Your speed, resolution, all these come into play. Brightness, okay, so like signage is more of the color contrast. We have rugged outdoor where high temp becomes important. Okay, transportation then depends on which one. Marine, there's a marine grade. There's also where you have to withstand, you have to have the display withstand vibration, certain form of vibration. Medical will be for medical grade application, and then many others. Okay, now, so what's the major difference between industrial and consumer display? Okay, so I list it out here because in actual fact, many times when we talk to customers, many customers will say they just display. there's not much of a diff. As long as it can show on the screen, can see on the screen, is good enough. But bearing in mind, there is a cost difference between industrial and consumer display, and there's a good reason for it. It's the way it's been designed for. Okay. Now, if you're looking at a consumer display, your focus application is more safe. Home, office, you don't have it subjected to white temp or vibration concern. Okay, your operating hours is far shorter, 12 hours, 12 hours times 7 days of operating hours. Sorry about the mistake there. Backlight MTBF is usually lower. Okay, brightness level about 250 to 300 nits is the norm. And you can only show landscape. You can't tilt the display to show portrait. Okay, the way it's been designed for, it doesn't work. Okay, and there's very little anti-burn-in design. That means burn-in in the sense of I'm going to show the same image over on the screen for many hours, and then there's a concern that the image may be burned in. So it's actually very little. Okay, design features. If you go and buy a TV or you're going to buy a typical display, some may not come with Versa mounting. Versa mounting is basically a standard where you have 4 screws holes behind the screen. Where you can do different kind of third-party mount, Versa mount. Smaller screen may be 75mm times 75mm square. Bigger screen may be 100, 120, 120, or 200, 200mm. So this is a standard size where you can mount your own mount. Many consumer displays, especially for the large one, like TVs, they don't have this mounting. It's basically a customized mounting. Okay, you don't have the flexibility. Okay, if you're running a TV, maybe you have a TV or video resolution. There's no touch noise immunity. Okay, I'll elaborate more on that later. And end of life, quite low, 1 to 2 years. You will see the actual model end of life. There'll be newer one to replace. Now, it comes to industrial display. The focus is different. The focus is more on durability. Okay, you buy this. There's extra cost to it, but the design for is designed for and tested for higher or longer operating hours, and also for more or factoring the environmental condition. So typically, industrial display is very focused on a specific application. It can be for HMI, for medical, for marine, for gaming, for signage. PIDS is passenger information display system, which you often see in a train station. Okay, FIDS is flight information display system, where you see in the airport. Okay, operating hours, majority can support 24/7. Some is 18/7. The backlight is definitely far longer. Okay, and the panel design, it can be as low as 300 to 500 nits. Okay, or if you're having a high bright version, it might be more than 1,000 nits. Okay, landscape portrait mode are both supported. Okay, with anti-burn-in features and better thermal dissipation. Some may have fan, some may not, but the components that's been used is meant to last at higher operating temp and also higher operating hours. So industrial design features, Versa mount, quite common. Some may have IP65 or IK0X. IK series basically for withstand impact resistance. It's a forward impact resistant. Multiple display configuration, and it can support many PC display. Okay, so regarding PC display, so let's say, for example, I get a TV. Typically, I get a TV, I connect to a PC. If the TV do not support the actual display output from the PC that you want, what you see is that part of the screen will be blank off, or maybe too big. It doesn't fit correctly. Okay, so take note of that. Another add-on, CS10 millivolt anti-EMI. Okay, this one I'll elaborate later in my later slide about how this works. Okay, and long product availability depends. Industrial display typically is about 3 to 4 years in terms of the panel. Okay, the product availability. If you need more than that, it can be done 7 to 8 years, but it's a different grade, different category. So usually upfront commitment from the customer is important. So then from there we'll decide which one to use. Okay, typically when you look at long product availability, is usually meant for equipment makers. They cannot just change the display accordingly because it may impact their certification process. For example, medical grade, okay, is quite expensive certification process. If you change the panel, the whole cert is void. So many equipment makers cannot afford that. So they will look at one that can have long product availability. Now, another area that comes to industrial display is the touchscreen. And touchscreen, in fact, there are many different types of touchscreen in the market. The common type will be resistive, PCAP, surface capacitive, infrared, DSP, and projective cap, surface acoustic wave. But the two most common and the two most popular is resistive and projective cap. In fact, if you just look back about 15 years ago, resistive touchscreen is the most common because at the time projective cap is rather expensive. But now it's the other way around. Okay, in terms of cost-wise, projective cap is still more, but in terms of commonality, people are using it. PCAP is now far more than resistive. Okay, and there's good reason behind it. So if you look at the two pictures, okay, I'll go one by one so you have a better idea how to choose which touchscreen for which environment. Okay, now resistive touchscreen. If you look at the picture where the finger is, when you touch the screen, the touch screen layer, the iridium thin oxide with the flexible film, is in front of the glass. That means your finger is touching the touchscreen layer. Okay, this is a pressure-induced touchscreen. Means you press it either by your bare finger, a stylus, or anything, maybe even a card or anything. It's a pressure-induced. As long as the two layer, the flexible film, they have actually two layers, the top and bottom layer. When they touch, they recognize the X and Y axis. So it's a pressure-induced touchscreen. I can wear different kind of gloves. As long as I press it, it will work. Okay, and many of the touchscreen layers can withstand many different chemicals. So you've got to check with the vendor which are the chemicals that's been supported. Disadvantage of this kind of touchscreen. First, it's susceptible to scratches. You get a resistive touchscreen, if there's a scratch on the screen, it can actually render the touchscreen damage. Surface hardness, okay, that means how much it can withstand scratches is a level 3. And it cut back 25% LCD brightness. So for example, if your LCD says 1000 nits, 1000 candela per meter square. If you use a resistive touch, minus 25% off, it becomes 750 nits. Okay. Slow touch response because it's pressure induced, so it's a bit slower and not suitable for multi-touch. Okay. Now, projective cap. This is, you look at a picture, the finger is touching the glass. The touch sensing layer is behind the glass, not in front of the glass. Okay, so basically when you touch it on the surface, it's the glass, right? The touch sensing layer is behind. So in a way, you do not really worry about chemicals because you are actually touching the glass. The touchscreen layer is behind. Now, as the name suggests, projected capacitive is a charge-based. Capacitive is holding charge. So it's a charge-induced touchscreen, very fast. So in fact, all your phones, modern phones nowadays, like your iPhone, your Note, or Xiaomi, or whatever, they're all using projective cap. Okay, light touch will work already. Okay, whereas in a resistive touch, you need to press harder. Okay, high durability, glass is facing the user. Surface hardness, because it's the glass, so it can be even higher. No recalibration needed. Resistive, you sometimes do need to recalibrate. Okay, after a while of usage. And MTBF, mean time before failure, there's no known wear out mechanism. So the failure is actually far lesser. Whereas if you look at the resistive touch, depending on how many wire you can only withstand certain million of touch at a certain point. The disadvantage, the cost is higher, but if you factor in the durability, actually it's much more worth it. Okay, certain gloves are supported, certain gloves are not. So usually thin gloves like those in use in a surgical, maybe in the hospitals, those are supported, or wafer fab, those are supported. So no need to worry. Okay, but then EMI, EMC issue, because it's charge-based, so EMI, EMC issues can sometimes pose issues to you. Okay, now, so let's look into the VUE series, what we have for the VUE series. The word view actually is a French word. Okay, you hear the word, it's like viewing, V-I-E-W. It means to see, okay, display. So what we have for view, we actually determine by, our key focus, make it of value to customer, not too expensive, but we have industrial grade design with longevity support, unified design, make it easier where you can just port over, and efficiency. So some of the key factors or key design orientation. We have hybrid and we also have normal one. Hybrid, typically we need to do a bit of customization. It can support both landscape and portrait. For the touch function, we have CS10V for preventing EMI interference. Glove, stylus. Okay, IK08 is the impact resistant. I'll show you a video of that later. Okay, multiple I/O. We have different display interface. Typically, most industrial display you see is either a VGA or a DVI. But this time around, we added in display port HDMI support. Okay, and we also have a smart display module option for the large format display version. Okay, and also front IP65. All of them is front IP65, and you can easily mount your units behind. We do have some screw holes that you can actually secure some of your players behind. Okay, so these are the 3 series. The panel mount for generic purpose, the VUE 2000, the 3000, and the 5000. Okay, now let's look into the VUE 2000 series. So some of the key, these are more for generic, used for generic industrial usage. So we have anti-noise CS10V. So if you look at the video here, how it works, especially if you're near certain equipment with that is RF equipment, okay, what you see is, let me play back the video, see if I can play back the video. Okay. Okay, you see the screen. If there is an interference, the screen keep flickering, right? You can see. So sometimes you can't see this issue. Only when you're at the point of installation, then you start to see this issue. So our VUE series already factored this in to prevent interference, electromagnetic interference from strong electrical fields from other RF equipment or cables. Okay, so that this already is protected. Now, and our protection level all the way to level 3. Okay, so it's up to 10 millivolt. Stylus pen, you can use different kind of stylus pen for it. Okay, so basically, as you know, it's a P cap, so you use a capacitive stylus pen. Okay, you can recognize it, but please use capacitive stylus pen, not the typical stylus if you're using a P cap. Wait, what's this? IP08. Okay, this is an impact resistant. In fact, IK has many levels. 01, 02, 03. The higher number, the better the better it can withstand impact. So if you know, for most what you call glass in front, for industrial, typically it's around 3 mm thick. If you use your phone, typically it's 0.75 to 1 mm thick. So if you drop, you can crack. But for industrial display, usually we have a thick, far thicker glass, and we use better tempered glass. So let's look into if I use a 5 kg force and hammer the screen. Okay, the screen doesn't crack. So IK08 for 5 joule, 1.7 kg weight. Okay, IP65. This is more for water and dirt and dust. So this is just for spraying. And then if you want bigger, jets of water. The water doesn't ingress from the side. Okay, it doesn't impact through the bezel at the side. Okay. So IP, the word IP is called ingress protection. First digit is always about solid. So 5 means dust protected. 5 is dust protected. 6 is dust tight. So for solid object, 6 is the highest. Now for liquid is up to 5, which is water jets. Okay. AG coating. AG means anti-glare. Okay, so you can see from here, without AG and with AG. We add in this code from all our VUE 2000 series. The MTBF, mean time before failure, for the backlight is about 50,000 hours on average. Okay, so if those display, if you sometimes see display where it start to dim and dim and dim, and the brightness level is not like previous, it could be your backlight that's already damaged or it's already almost end of life. Okay, so we have it at a 50,000 hours landscape portrait. You can switch mode. Okay, an extension, so you can actually mount your own player behind. We have extra screw holes for you to mount. Okay, so these are the add-on that you can see for our different VUE series model. Now, All our VUE series come with default projective capacitive touchscreen. So as I mentioned, projective capacitive is, the word capacitive is charge induced. So typically when you think charge induced, it should be a bare bone finger, okay, where your body charge, when you touch the screen, you recognize the charge. Okay. However, you can actually tune the firmware to determine what kind of glove it can support. So these are the 12 types of glove it can support. As you can see, there are many different thickness. Sometimes you may have to adjust the firmware to make it detectable. Okay, so it's a very useful one. Okay. So panel mount, you have a cable management cover if you want it, optional. Okay, for some of the larger model, we have it. Okay, so you can actually mount your cabling so it won't be so messy. Okay, the panel mount view, you can see from here, these are the Versa mount. Okay, and you can also do panel mount if you want. We have the panel mount kit that's already included by default. If beyond that, the Versa mount, then you may have to get a third-party Versa mount kit. So depend on which one you want, a wall mount, ceiling mount, or floor mount, or desk mount, up to you to decide. Just bear in mind the weight and the CG. Okay, landscape, portrait, and many different design. So the Versa mount is up to you to mount. Okay, you can decide based on your site environment situation. Okay, so there are many different application scenario for the VUE 2000. It can be for signage for small screen, because VUE 2000 usually the screen is smaller. It doesn't go up to 42 inch. It's only the 5000 series that is for the large format. Okay. Now, 3000 series. This is medical grade series. Okay. Medical grade, typically, okay, put it this way, there is a cert called IEC or UL 60601-1. This is a medical grade certificate. Certain area in the hospital, which we deem as critical care. Critical care will mean places like OT, operating theater, ICU, isolation ward, recovery ward. These are critical care areas. In fact, in many countries, critical care area, you need your PC or your equipment need to meet a medical grade cert. So all this cert becomes very important. So you see all this fun part. We already have some of the VUE 2000 design already factored in. Okay, and the add-on for medical grade DICOM support. Okay, so DICOM is basically for it's actually a data format for X-ray in a medical field. So there's many different versions of this, but basically in a hospital environment, the files must be DICOM supported so that each device can read properly the contrast, the black and white. Okay, so IEC 60601-1 is the medical grade cert, and then we also add in anti-reflective and anti-smudge. Anti-smudge more for anti-fingerprint coating. So what does medical grade involve? First, medical grade right now is 4th edition. I think most jurisdictions, like in the US, in Europe, in Japan, Japan have their own equivalent, have already incorporated 4th edition. That means if for any new deployment, you need to meet 4th edition grade cert. Okay, you need to get a cert, and this cert is not cheap. In fact, I'm sure not many people are aware. Medical grade certification, the cost of it to go for medical grade certification is around USD 40K, 40,000. Take you about 8 to 10 weeks to finish all the tests. It's a battery of tests, so it's a very costly certificate. Okay, so what it involves? It involves limiting leakage current, because as you know, current more than 0.3 milliamp, you're already in trouble. So what happens is that medical grade one, they limit the microampere, 300 or 500 microampere, depending on your cert. So for example, in an operating theater, your body is a form of insulation, not a very strong insulation, but when you open up your body, right, this kind of small leakage current can kill the person, can kill the patient. Okay, so that has become a very important aspect. You limit the EMI, EMC, electromagnetic interference. Okay, IPX1, that means if there are drip on the top, water dripping on the top or whatever, it will be, it doesn't go into the display. Okay, antibacterial, some may have nano zinc oxide coating, some may not, but if we're antibacterial, so this is quite standard. DICOM is for digital imaging, typically it's more for X-ray. Okay, and one major thing about medical grade is that the contrast ratio is a little bit is far better. As you know, we have 256 shades of grayscale. In a medical grade display, typically there will be a gamma board inside, extra board. This board is used to distill all the 256 shades of gray. Very, very clear, the black and white. As contrast ratio is the ratio between black and white. If your contrast ratio is very good, the between each scale, you can see it distinctly. Even in color, you can see the surgical operation much more vivid. You can see the veins, you can see all these things much more clearly. So that's why for medical grade display, there's always this requirement, okay, to make sure that all the grayscale are distinct. So the cover glass that we do a treatment. For the VUE 2000, we have anti-glare. So basically when light comes in, you will try to, with this anti-glare coating, you will disperse the brightness so that it's not glaring. Okay, this is a common application, especially when you're doing outdoor. Okay, anti-reflection. So this is where how much light come in when you diffract on the LCD or the glass, how much it bounce back. So it's actually to reduce the amount of reflection. Okay, we have it on a VUE 3000 to see it much more clearly. Okay, and anti-fingerprint or anti-smudge, we call it. So this is where your fingerprint, you can actually wipe off. Basically anything, any dirt on it, it can actually flow off easily. So there's this extra coating of it. This is very important, especially in the medical domain. Okay, so it doesn't stain the screen in a way. Okay, so many different usage for VUE 3000. Most of the time used for diagnostic or medical equipment makers. Okay, nursing cards and all those. So you can see we have different kind of design. The outlooks looks the same. Okay, you can request it from us, not an issue. Okay, we have both black and white. Now, 5000 series. This series is actually is a large format display, typically used for digital signage in the public area or in a corporate office, or you can also use for kiosks. So comes to signage. Okay, as you know, signage, there are many different kind of business model. Some business model is where the signage operator, they rent the place and they sell advertisement and they play different kind of content, but the ownership of the display and the player belong to the signage operator, not to the building owner. So in that sense, typically this kind of business model or advertisement driven business model, the network operator tends to scrimp on cost because they need scale. They need a lot of display in order to have the scale. But then it means they have a lot of upfront costs they need to come up. So usually this kind of network operators, some may, because of the high cost overlay, they may look into lowering the cost of investment. So now the cost of investment, some may actually, in fact, may go back to TV screen instead of signage display. So actually, what's the difference? They all look the same, right? So now TV screen is the one they use for home. I do encounter customers, like for example, I recall a few years ago, I have a customer who bought about a 42-inch TV screen. He bought 200 oversets, each one costing about $800. Whereas a typical signage display screen will cost you at least $1,200. So it's like 1/3 more. So if he's buying 200, so he can imagine the cost saving. But in actual fact, he regret because the TV screen, the resolution doesn't fit the PC resolution. And in fact, the screens, because they are actually meant for TV, they are not meant for long operating hour. And the customer's deployment location is at least 18 hours operation. Okay, they are essentially used for healthcare facilities. So hospitals, most of the specialist clinic or most of the lobby, they close at 10. So only the remaining hours they can rest. So what happened is that the TV screen, instead of letting it last 3 years, within 1.5 years, he had to replace a lot of TV. So in actual fact, he's buying cheap, but he's paying more later. You buy cheap now, but you pay more later. Because this is the issues about selecting display. If you want to do it for signage or for long hours, please use a proper signage display. Okay, the key difference. Number one, a TV is not designed for high operating hours. You can, some of the TV will tell you what 60,000 MDBF hours for the MDBF. But in actual fact, for a TV, it's not meant for 24/7. If you run it at 24/7, it'll be far less than 60 because it's meant for up to 10 hours operation. Brightness level is also lower. Landscape mode only. Okay, you can't tilt it, and there's no anti-burning design. Okay, so and the power consumption is also higher. So your running cost, in fact, is also higher. Okay, whereas the signage display, you can have it either for 24/7 or 18 hours by 7. There's no that you can always on it without sleep mode. Okay, and a panel design, the brightness level is higher. You can support both landscape and portrait, and you have an anti-burning and better heat thermal dissipation. So, and then the overall power consumption is typically also lower because you're going to use it for long hours. They know it's for commercial use. Okay, so bear in mind the difference. Though the price of a TV is cheaper, do take note. You look at the total cost of ownership, TCO, which means when we say TCO means total cost of ownership means equal to your first purchase price, the price that you pay for it, plus your downtime price. If assuming this unit fails, how much lost advertising revenue that I'm going to lose? Quantify it in dollar value, plus RMA repair costs. Okay, that means the whole thing is down. You need to send it for repair or replacement costs. So sometimes you take 3 years to 5 years look. Maybe it's much more worth to buy a signage because maybe after 1 year or 2 years, I have to replace the whole TV. This is going to cost me more. Okay. Now, introduction for the VUE series. These are the common function like I mentioned just now. Okay, there's no screen burn. Okay, we have a screen burning utility to prevent screen burning. Landscape portrait is supported. Multiple I/O. You look at the VUE 5000, because it's a bigger display, you can see many I/Os are already designed for. And in fact, we even have a SDM slot. So SDM is basically, we call it Smart Display Module. Okay, this is where it's a new standard. Last time, I believe many of you heard Open Pluggable Specification, OPS. That is only useful if you want to run up to Full HD. If you want to run 4K, 8K, then you need to change to another new standard called Smart Display Module. This standard was actually released by Intel. It's an open standard, so many of the large display like NEC, Philips, Panasonic, and a few others are already using SDM. They do have SDM offering. Okay, so we also have it for our own. Okay, so the SDM slot is usually slotted behind at the side here. Okay, so this is the SDM, how it looks like. Okay, we have different type of SDM. So basically, when you mount it in, it makes it easier for you to put into a display, and then you only worry about the mounting of the display. You don't need to have a separate mounting for your media player. Okay. So we have two smart module or smart display module SDM. Both are large format type. Okay, we have the already released is the 8 generation Core I version. So you can slot it in. So this become a PC with display, like all in one. Okay, instead of just a display. And up and coming in the second half or maybe in the late Q2, we will have Hard Lake. It's an atom-based model. So typically, this actually helps signage vendors to make it easier for them to mount the player, and then also make it easier for them to upgrade in future. So for example, if they may want to run the 10 gen, 11 gen, they can just take it out and swap it over. Okay, so this is the add-on features that we have for our SDM that can be used on the VUE 5000 series. Okay, so these are all the different kind of application. It can be for signage, it can be for situation room. Situation room may mean not just one, it may be a few panels together. Okay, so that's about it for, and behind all this is actually the detailed specs. Okay, if assuming that there's no other question, we will end for today's session. Okay, yeah, and by the way, we do have a 10.1 inch evaluation unit in our office. So if assuming that you have a need for one sample set to test, let us know. Or let us know your project details and we can actually loan to you to test. Okay, can. Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll off for today. Okay, thanks everyone for participating. Thank you.